Hi everyone, my name is Freya Serafina. I'm a PhD student in women's spirituality, among other things, and today I'm looking at whether or not ChatGPT can actually help me write my papers. So presently, I am doing my first comprehensive exam on women and world religions. It's a literature review. I have to read 30 books and 5 articles/chapters. And that's a lot of books in a really short amount of time. I've got 15 weeks, not just to read the books, but to do a 30 to 50 page exam, literature review of all of those things. And I'm looking at how women create spaces of power within religious contexts. And I'm looking at 3 different areas of the globe. This is women and world religions. So I'm looking at different religions, different spiritual backgrounds, and women from different continents. And so not only do I have to read this material, summarize this material through the lens of my personal questions and arguments, but I also have to find things that connect. So I'm connecting experiences and ideas and texts that cover anywhere from ancient Greece and Rome to modern day South Korea and Ireland. So not necessarily things that you think go together, but from my research, they do, I promise. Anyways, so I went on ChatGPT and I'm just typing in a bunch of questions, starting a little broad, then going a little more in depth, like asking specifically about power. And what I'm trying to see is, can ChatGPT successfully analyze what's in any given written material and provide me with a direction that I can go in my research? So I'm looking at a couple of books that work for me in my specific field. So I've got some of the books that I actually have read, am reading, will be reading, and some that I used in one that I used in my master's degree as well. I'm also looking at a couple of academic articles as well. With this book, When Women Were Priests by Karen Jo Torjussen. She is the chair of the Women's Studies and Religion Department at Claremont Graduate School in California. Among other things, she is widely regarded as a leading authority on women in ancient Christianity. So I was hoping ChatGPT would have information about this book. And it did. But again, let's look at what it actually knows about the content of the book. So I asked, what is When Women Were Priests by Karen Jo Torjussen about? Now, I'm a Norwegian, so I want to say Jo Torjussen, but I'm speaking English. So I looked at this book, and it says that it explores the historical role of women in early Christianity, specifically focusing on their leadership roles within the church as priests. Torjussen delves into the evidence from ancient texts and archaeological findings to argue that women played significant roles as leaders, teachers, and even priests in the early Christian community. Cool. That's what I want to know. And from what I've read so far about this book, that's true. The problem with this review is that it's not very specific. It's giving me these broad, sweeping generalizations about what I could find within the text. Now, that's really helpful if I'm trying to decide if this is a text I want to read for my specific topic. Based on what it's telling me, it is a text I want to read, but I want to know more about power and power dynamics. So I asked, what are the main points of this book? Getting a little further. And ChatGPT gave me 6 different specific points about what I could find within the context of this book. And I wanted to go even further, going down the ladder. What does this book say about women and power? Now, it tells me then it gets even more specific. This is good news. And at first I was like, damn, it's not proving my point. My point is that it's not specific enough. And truth be told, even with all of this information, it's not necessarily specific enough, because what it doesn't tell me is that Torgerson also examines the specific roles of specific women throughout history, and not just in one particular ancient place, but in a bunch of different places in the ancient world. And it talks about how these women influenced political spheres, social spheres, religious spheres. And it gave me a timeline of these women's events, and about this one king who threw a hissy fit that his mom was so influential. And I think that's really important information to have that ChatGPT just doesn't have. But it does tell me that this book answers a lot of my questions, and it's something that I should read. So then I wanted to ask about an older book. And this is The Life and Hard Times of a Korean Shaman, of Tales and the Telling of Tales by Laurel Kendall. I almost said Lauren. Laurel Kendall. And this book came out in 1988. So I thought, well, this is not that it's niche, but truth be told, I had a little bit of a difficult time finding books that were very specific for my purpose and research focus on South Korean shamans. So if you've got some suggestions, please leave them in the comments. I'd love to read more. So I asked about this, and ChatGPT knew it was an ethnographic study that provides insight into the world of Korean shamanism through the lens of one particular shaman. This is true. And her experiences, and told me what the main points and the themes addressed in the book were. So that was good. So I asked, how do shamans create spaces of power in this book? And ChatGPT was able to tell me through ritual performance, sacred spaces, symbolic objects, etc., etc. What it doesn't tell me really is it's an ethnographic study, right? It doesn't tell me anything about the voice or the person that's being studied. And an ethnographic study is obviously all about the person, the people, the voice of those people. And so it tells me about the themes and the overall controlling ideas of the text. But it doesn't tell me anything about Young-Su's mother, who this book is specifically about. And also doesn't tell me about the relationship between Kendall and Young-Su's mother. And it doesn't tell me about how they grew together, their friendship, the nuance of that, how Kendall went and worshipped at the mountain with Young-Su's mother. This book was really interesting because it really told the life story of someone, and you miss that when you ask ChatGPT to tell you about it. But it does give you the main points, the main themes, and it does tell me this is definitely a book that I should read for my research. And then we get to our first text that ChatGPT doesn't know anything about. This one, called Women in Ministry in Ireland by Anne Francis. This was published a few months after ChatGPT's last update, and that's why they don't apparently have any information on this book, which is a problem for me. Now, this book was published in 2016, and ChatGPT still says that it doesn't have direct information about what this book says about women in power. So it's just provided me with a general overview of other information that's available about priestesses in Rome during this time. While that background information is helpful if I was doing a broader study, it doesn't solve my specific problem and answer my specific research question. So off to reading I go. Now let's move on to some articles. So let's see. Here's an article from 2015 called Unreliability and Gender, untrusted female prophets in ancient Greek and Jewish texts. So let's copy and paste that title. What is the article about? Why do you say likely? I use likely because I don't have access to the specific content of the article. Therefore, my response is based on an educated guess about the potential themes and topics that the article might cover, drawing from my understanding of common scholarly interests and approaches within the fields of gender studies, religious studies, and ancient literature. Okay. So one of the things that I'm looking for in my research is how women create spaces of power within religious constructs. And I'm looking at priestesses and oracles in ancient Greece and Rome, shamans in South Korea, and Christian nuns and bishops and priests in Ireland. And so when I see in this article that there might be topics of representation of female prophets, gender stereotypes and bias, and power dynamics and patriarchy, that piques my interest because it's in line with my research goals. But this may and likely and not being able to actually tell me about what the author says in the article is problematic because it's basically making gross assumptions about a wide area of research, and it doesn't really hone in on what I'm looking for. For example, for power dynamics and patriarchy, it says the article may examine the power dynamics inherent in the marginalization or dismissal of female prophets within ancient Greek and Jewish societies, considering how patriarchal structures and cultural norms contribute to the devaluation of women's voices and experiences. Okay. That is very general and broad, however, and it's making the assumption that all we're going to see are power dynamics within a marginalized context. And I'm actually looking for not necessarily like men versus women or just patriarchy versus women or gender differentiation. I'm looking at what the women do in those religious contexts. And so, yeah, it's pointing me in a particular direction, but I don't have any examples. I don't have any references. I don't have any quotes, and I'm definitely going to need those. And so I don't have anything that will help me to build my argument for why this text should be included in my overall research. So let's try another one. So here's an article from 2016 called Shifting Agencies Through New Media, New Social Statuses for Female South Korean Shamans by Leora Sarfati. So let's copy and paste. What is... Again, we're seeing that word likely. That's not good. So under the category Gender Dynamics and Empowerment, ChatGPT says, the article may explore the gender dynamics at play in the use of new media by female shamans, considering how digital technologies both reflect and shape changing norms and expectations regarding gender, power, and spirituality in South Korean society. Great. I've read the article, so I know what it discusses. The first article I did, I haven't read that one yet, so it's really, I can't have anything to base it off of, but I've read this one. And yes, that is what it's doing, and so much more. And it's really hard to just sort of boil that down into those two sentences there. Now, what this could help me with is filling out some of the more general reflections on the article before I really dig into the dirt, if you will. And what I have found helpful in looking at, I guess, overall reflections or reviews of something on ChatGPT is that it helps me sometimes to sort of construct my paragraph or sentence structure. Maybe there's something I've forgotten, or maybe there's something more I can talk about. Um, and it sometimes helps to point me in a direction, or to even give me like transitional sentences or transitional ideas between two different texts. For example, if I were to type in, talk to me about women creating spaces of power within religious constructs, it'll probably give me a whole bunch of, probably 4 paragraphs of stuff about general overviews of that. I might find that helpful if I'm looking for a way to tailor my arguments and construct my paragraphs and find ideas that connect all of the different articles and books that I've read. But when it comes to specificity, which is really important when you've got a specific argument that you're making and when you're trying to develop your own scholarly voice, ChatGPT just doesn't do it for me, and I don't think it should do it for you either. On top of the fact that it's definitely plagiarism, and that's frowned upon in academia. It's not specific enough. And as grad students, as PhD students, we're really trying to look at specific arguments, specific ideas, specific scholarship, and craft our own specific and unique voice. So, yeah, if you're struggling to find connecting ideas, if you're struggling to find a direction, and if you're trying to see whether or not a specific book would be helpful for your research for you to read, I think ChatGPT is a great resource for you. But it is not the answer to your problems about having to write 30 to 50 pages for a comp literature review, sadly. So let me know what you think. Do you use ChatGPT? Are you completely, totally against AI? Where do you stand on this issue? And what's your experience with using ChatGPT if you do? Let me know.